The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, hi everybody, and good morning to you. We are here at our 119th program, and we're dealing now with some of these glamours, I think, that arise in the individual, which I think will be interesting to everybody, causes initiated actually by the individual. You know, the discussion or the conquest of illusion, as he says, may lie centuries ahead because of the general condition of humanity. It's mostly Atlantean-minded, okay? But that will gradually fade out, just the way the Lemurian-mindedness is, if we can call it that, is fading away. And we will have a true entry into that mental focus, which is not yet quite mental polarization, and it will be of usefulness in conquering the, well, there's so many ways that it is portrayed, you know, in the labors of Hercules. Usually these monsters, which prevent the realization of reality, they have three parts to them, you know, either three heads or three groups of heads, as in the Hydra, or Geryon in Pisces is threefold. The three-headed dog in Capricorn is there as well. So this has to be, the Maya glamour illusion has to be slain in each one of our cases. And it is, it's difficult to do because it's not really obvious, and usually it requires, often requires the help of someone else. In this case, it was like the Tibetan, or someone close to you who's knowledgeable, who can point out certain veils in your life which are preventing you from seeing reality. So the future is bright, but as we can see even now, we have to fight our way through a lot of ignorance and focus within the personality per se, and unawareness of the unity of life and the intended unity of humanity. We so many people are still essentially selfish, and they have not yet overcome the Martian tendency, which really, well, perhaps at the second initiation is significantly lessened. So let's see here. Want to, those that are here, I just want to welcome you. So Alexandra and Annette and Antoinette, Ario, and let's see here, Britta and Catherine, Chris, Karen, Leslie, Margot. Whoops, I'm having things jump on me here. Mariana, Mariut, Martha, Natnia, Rebecca, Risto, Sam, Stacia, Tia, T.U., Vera, Veronique, Walter, Zenaidi. And over here on the staff side, supporting us, Michael, Stacy, and Joe, Waltz, and Tuija's over there too, and so am I. Okay. Well, let's just have a little bit of an alignment here before we get into things. Let's align with Parabrahm. Well, that's an interesting word, and generally means the one great supra-universal reality, which is completely without cause, we might say, the cause only of itself, but is not really truly ever caused. It just always has been. And it's difficult, perhaps for our minds constituted in a concrete manner, to understand such a foundational reality than which there is no other. A reality than which there is no other. So it's the one without a second. It stands alone forever, forever. But anyway, that's a little bit high. And of course, it's possible to be swept up into these large considerations and forget what we have right in front of us, which has to be attended to, of course. But in any case, we are where we are in the world geographically. And we need to strengthen our vehicles and to render them more refined and more group responsive, so that in fact we can invoke the energies which will help us clear, again, in Aquarius, the three stages of the Augean stables. There's always three that have to be cleared, and the majority of humanity is pretty much focused in emotional selfish response and unaware of the method of clearing the source of its bondage. And that's not even the mental trap which lies ahead when we think that our thoughts are the things that the thoughts describe. It's a big mistake, but it takes some lives to work our way through that kind of thing. So we're learning and we're contributing in our own esoteric way to the dissipation of at least the glamours that we can notice. Maybe the real attack against glamour also is not occurring now, but still lies a little bit ahead of us when things settle down a bit. But then, of course, those who know something about the process have to help things to settle down so we can see with clarity. There's so much cacophony, so much dust and confusion and emotion of a disorganized kind. I think we'll see a lot of that in these next number of years. We'll see whether the year 2025 makes a difference. But then again, what happens on the higher planes sometimes takes some time to work through onto the lower. So we work together, knowing a little bit of what we're supposed to know and helping to clear at least our own consciousness, which is a gift to humanity when we can do it, and then working with humanity's consciousness in general. So that's what we're going to be doing. This work can have value as subtle as it seems. Now, we had, let's see here. I think we have to go a little bit farther. No, there we are. Okay. So we're looking at the causes of glamour. You know, I guess the main thing to understand is that we live on a non-sacred planet, which is behind in its schedule. It's rapidly becoming sacred, and, you know, in terms of cosmic time anyway, and inwardly, it is sacred already, we are told, which is an amazing idea, but there's a lot to work out because we're sort of the hospital of the solar system here, and we have inherited for purification a lot that has come from the failure on the moon chain and from difficulties in an earlier major solar system, which emphasized the personal and intelligence aspect. And then, of course, you know, the deliberate attack upon human consciousness by those intelligent but loveless beings who were transferred from the moon chain and from the previous solar system in a high state of mental development and a high state of mental selfishness. That's been a very big problem too. And just, you know, the inadequacy of our response mechanism. In the early days, it was not highly developed, and the discriminative factor was not really there. And once we can begin to have the mind held steady in the light, then we are in a much better position to deal with the glamours that beset us. Now, we're getting into this interesting section. Long ago, we covered some of it. And, of course, it will apply to every one of us according to our ray types. Maybe you can have glamours associated with your soul ray even, and certainly with your personality ray, and the other rays that are involved contribute to the glamorous combination, which in your particular case, my particular case, holds us back from the vision of reality and from somehow really touching what is true, the good, the true, the beautiful. So causes initiated by the individual. If you have studied all the above, a lot there, right, with the needed care, it will be apparent to you that the individual man enters upon incarnation already handicapped by existent glamour of a very ancient origin and utterly beyond his power to control at this stage. I use the word, it is of great potency. I use the word handicapped advisedly for lack of a better term. So, you know, we're in this, we have many inherited glamours, many emotional desire orientations which are not correct and which are leading us astray. We think they are correct and we think there's much to them, but we always wake up someplace having been misled. I was thinking of an old German song by Robert Schumann. He was a famous romantic composer, and he talked about two young men who set off in life full of hope and full of promise. And one of them took the conventional road, and he married and had children and did all the usual things, but the other was more adventurous, but somehow subject to glamour, and he was overcome by the ocean of glamour. Those words weren't used, but the word schlund was used, sort of meaning to be covered up by water, the wave. And only years and years later did he awaken and emerge with all his forces drained away as he came out of the sea of glamour. And, there are just many, many pitfalls along the way, and the trouble is it's so invisible, usually, to us. But as I've said before, if you find yourself being perhaps criticized or having a certain type of orientation or behavior pointed out, and you say, hey, that's just the way I am. I'm always going to be this way. That's me, okay. Well, probably you're defending some glamour. So the individual man enters upon incarnation already handicapped by existing glamour of a very ancient origin. Back, it wasn't so much of a Lemurian problem, but early Atlantean days were 12 million years ago. This is a long time when we consider a century as a significant span. So, a very ancient origin and utterly beyond his power to control at this stage. Excuse me. It is of great potency, and I use the word handicapped advisedly for lack of a better term. A handicap is when you have a disability about which you can't do anything. It probably ended up from those old days when punishments were very severe, and literally, if you stole something, they, cut off your hand, then you were really handicapped. But the whole idea is that we have tendencies that demonstrate inabilities, and we've been at it a long time. And look, the condition of the astral body doesn't suddenly improve so dramatically in the interval between lives that you come back and there's no glamour remaining. So we've come in a glamoured state, let us say, and maybe some nations more than others in that state. In the World War II, he considered Germany the most powerful of the Axis powers and most subject to glamour. And I think when you look at the Pisces personality of Germany, certainly at that time, the explanation is not hard to find. Wherever there is Pisces, if one hasn't really worked it through and entered the later stages of evolution, then there's likely to be pretty strong glamour. I would like, however, he says, to point out that the true significance of the situation exists in the fact that these conditions offer the opportunity to the man of evoking the understanding and point of view of the soul, for they provide the means whereby experience is gained, so this is a little milder version of Master Moria coming along and saying, the worse the better, as if obstacles are possibilities. This is his famous and often repeated statement. If you're up against it, you can develop the qualities needed to overcome it, and we have our own sort of modern version of this. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. So it's not all bad. And we can develop capacities by being faced with the opponent and learning how to overcome that opponent, even if the opponent is of our own making. So we emerge eventually enriched in experience. This experience will lead eventually to the soul assuming control of the mechanism, the personality, and thus giving to that solar angel, that higher being, a definite field of service. Remember that the solar angel is not yet entirely avataric. What do I mean by that? You know, that an avatar descends into its field of service with no true expectation or need for anything. It's a pure gift. It's not part of the developmental process necessarily, though one can't help but think, certainly some development occurs, but it is out of pure beneficence that the avatar descends, and not because it's part of its program of improvement. Now, the solar angel is not yet purely avataric, and taking care of a human being over millions of years is part of its program, we might say. So it needs a field of service, and the animal man turns out to be that, and all the many vicissitudes through which the animal man passes over millions of years. This gives the soul a real workout, because there are certain laws on Sirius, the area, the source in which the solar angel for us has been trained, and they insist on freedom. The law of freedom is an Iranian kind of thing, sensitivity being Neptunian and karma being Saturnian. As Sirius works through those three synthesizing planets. So in this case, it's freedom, and you cannot violate the freedom of those that you are caring for. And I guess in a certain way, every parent learns this, usually the hard way. So eventually the soul will assume control, and a field of service around the vehicle through which the soul is seeking experience and expression are normally and naturally subject to world glamours and to the glamours of humanity as well as illusion. So it really does seem like we're up against it here, doesn't it? These subtle and powerful forces, but it's all part of the redemption that is being undertaken on this particular planet, until we become, in the words of the schools, we become adjudicators between the pairs of opposites, and we can really then tell what is spiritual and of the soul and what is personal and of matter. Okay, so these vehicles normally and naturally subject to world glamours, and we can't help it. And to the glamours of humanity. We're just born into it. And, unless you rebel, my old teacher used to say, played on the words, about striking the bell and rebelling. And the idea is that unless we rebel against the conditioning that we are born into, and so many of us have done that, and it's maybe been painful, we cannot come closer to reality, and we are held in the very condition as that of the grandfather, as Moria constantly points out. He doesn't want us to imitate our grandfather. He doesn't want us, as he says, to sleep in the bed of a grandfather. So we have to look forward, and when you do look forward, there's going to be confrontation and rebellion, sounding your own note, rather than to be overcome by the conditioning. Okay, when the soul, in the early stages of experience, falls into the snare, the trap of Maya, of glamour, and eventually of illusion, about which people are so very sure, the reason is that the soul is identifying itself with those forms, and therefore with the surrounding glamour, and thus failing to achieve identification with itself. Now, this is really somehow a very important statement, and maybe we just really should take it in. When the soul, in the early stages of experience, falls into the snare of Maya, of glamour, and eventually of illusion, the reason is that the soul, now here we're pretty well talking about the soul in incarnation, which is what our consciousness is. The reason is that the soul is identifying itself with those forms, and therefore with the surrounding glamour, and this is the key sentence, and thus failing to achieve identification with itself. Now let's think about that, just for pondering, with what are we identified, with what is our consciousness identified, and have we gone far enough to achieve identification with our true self? Well, that's what are we, really? In the last analysis, we are no perception at all. We're not a self-perception. We are pure being. And, that's the goal of our reactivated group called identification as being. It's going to last quite a while, I predict, as we really try to get a hold of this factor of isness, instead of identifying with and as what isness has apparently become. I'm looking at a garden right now, and maybe some trees here, and with what am I identified? With the form or with the source? Anyway, it's a long haul to make sure that works within your nature. Okay. As evolution proceeds, the nature of the problem becomes apparent to the soul in incarnation. And a process is then instituted whereby the soul frees itself from the results of wrong identification. The whole issue, so much of our freedom or our thraldom, our imprisonment, depends upon that with which we identify. And as long as we're identified with a form and not seeing ourselves as the origin of that form, we are in some kind of prison. Now, usually the first thing we identify with is, in this modern age is our own body. But what happens when that body disappears and still we are? And what happens when every vehicle disappears and still we are? So that's something we've experienced maybe many times, and finally we'll get it right down here on the physical plane, so we will not be bewildered by the obvious. So anyway, the soul is going to free itself from all wrong identification and thus liberate itself from glamour. Every soul in incarnation, and now note this carefully, everybody, because this is about how we serve. And it also means that work upon ourselves, which is successful, is a form of service. Every soul in incarnation which succeeds in releasing its consciousness, note that, from the world of illusion and of glamour, is definitely serving the race and helping to free humanity from this ancient and potent thraldom. You know, sometimes we have these expressions, it kind of tells you where we are, you know. If someone looks wonderful, he says, "Oh, you look so glamorous." Like, whoa, that's a compliment, right? Except it's using the wrong energy. Or we say to a person, "Oh, you look enthralling," which means you've captivated my consciousness and I'm no longer free. So we have to even watch the words we use and what they mean, because they really mean something else other than we have thought they meant. So it must be borne in mind that when a man is nearing the stage of consciousness where both the astral body and the mental body are active and functioning, and what would we call that kind of consciousness? Kama-manasic. He himself becomes a manufacturer of glamour. Each one of us a little glamour factory here. He struggles with forces within himself and within the world in which he lives. Struggling with forces. Think about that, because so many of us are really confronted with forces with which we must struggle. But of course, we're getting stronger and stronger as we successfully struggle. So he struggles with forces within himself and within the world in which he lives. And the increasing potency of the inflowing soul energy, which comes in conflict with personality forces. You know, this is the standard Arjuna problem. Gradually produces around him a field of glamour. It entraps him. He cannot find his way into reality. And an environment of illusion that brings this third category of glamour into full play, and that would be probably, illusion itself, and that transitional phase we call kama-manas. These glamours are dependent upon the expression of the different forces which constitute a man's lower nature, all of them, really, all the rays, of which he is becoming increasingly aware, and pass through the stages of emergence into recognition, potency in expression, and violence in conflict with, until the struggling soul sits down, as did Arjuna. He put down his weapons, and he did not rush headlong into the battle, and he questioned himself. So The struggling soul in incarnation, that which wants the truth and is beset by the opposing tendencies of the pairs of opposites, he sits down for evaluation. In the midst between the two opposing forces, soul and personality, and asks himself. And these questions are very interesting, and I think, what we'll do is just take a quick look at them and get into them later. But to know that this does exist and that these are the kinds of questions you will ask yourself as you attempt to extricate yourself from glamour is useful. So it begins simply with a question of right or wrong. Which is right? This or that? Well, no, in the case of Arjuna, it was the higher part of his family representing the soul, which was the correct group and right in this context. Number 2, how can I distinguish where my duty or my responsibility lies? Because, DK tells us, how do you know the soul is working in you? It's not that you necessarily feel good. It's because the sense of responsibility has been activated and you are carrying out that responsibility. So how can I distinguish where my duty or my responsibility lies? Now, think about problems you may be having right now, making an important decision between this and that. It's the fate of mankind, humanity is the fate. We're a fourth-ray kingdom. And we have a fourth-ray monadic position. So we're always going to be adjudicating, making a proper judgment, hopefully proper, between the pairs of opposites. Okay. So just think of this in terms of your own situation, right? Because, you're not going to get through life, especially if you're a disciple, without having to make some of these really important and even life-determining decisions. Number 3, how can I find my way out of this bewildering situation? And usually it's the golden thread, you hang on to the golden thread. It's Ariadne's thread, and she laid it down so that Theseus could escape the Minotaur, and he followed the thread out of the labyrinth. Number 4, how can I bring in the control of the warrior so that the two groups of forces which I love, notice, split love, may be resolved into a unity? Well, just look at soul and personality. They're not going to remain separate forever. We must become the soul-infused personality, and DK talks about the great heights of personality expression that can be achieved and must be achieved. Like someone like Leonardo, a fourth-ray personality, I believe, and a fourth-ray soul, both. I'm under that impression from having read that, but, the alignment in this case would be easier, perhaps. But they will not forever remain apart. Something has to bring the soul and its instrument together. And it's usually the power of service and meditation which do that. Well, literally, meditation, study, and service. Now, this one looks like a repeat, but you're blocked. How can I find my way out of this impasse? because you have to wake up to the fact that you're in an impasse. You can't go through and beyond. Number 6, why must I hurt that which I love? You know, the other part of my family, right? And through which I have expressed myself for ages. Why must I hurt the personality? Well, you run into someone like Master Hilarion is kill out this, kill out that, you know, and it's basically it's the personality that is suffering, you know, because of its attachment to phenomenal things. Number 7, how can I become aware of that mental illumination, the mind held steady in the light, right, which will reveal the middle way between the pairs of opposites? Because really you can't throw away either soul or personality, considering them as the pairs of opposites. So you have to find that way which gives just representation to each one of these factors within our nature. Sometimes a really, really fanatical response is found, and it may even be slated to be the way to travel for a particular individual, and but maybe a balance is being achieved in a way we don't know. And then finally, sort of from the Bhagavad Gita, how can I see God, or else the form of God? Now that's really looking beneath the garment of God to the one who wears the garment, putting it in fifth ray terms. How can I see God, or at least the form of God? And there's a section in the Bhagavad Gita which deals exactly with the form of God. Now, I'm not going to go on much more. I think we're just about there. And he's going to tell us about the Bhagavad Gita. So we've reached page 116, and we started at 113. So let me put this down as how far we have traveled, because next time we're going to want to know. All right. And we may, of course, you'll have had chance to think about these 8 questions. It almost seems like the Buddha's method, always offer 8 of this and of that. Okay, so this is 119. And, our day, this is number 59. And our day is the 19th. By the way, this is quite a lot of 19s today. Look at that. 19 July, 19. There's another 19 in there somewhere. And it's from 113 to 116. All right. That's how far we've gotten. It gets very practical because, you know, look, we're talking about improving and refining our character so we actually become useful to the hierarchy in its plan of redemption for humanity and the planet. This is a very practical book, and it's been very difficult on those people who were in the Tibetans group of 9, which was undertaking this clarification of consciousness. So the next time we get together, it'll be number 60, if I'm correct. And we'll start from page 116. And it will be the 26th of this month, and it'll be evening reading. Okay, that's good. Okay, friends, that's I think that's really as far as we can go. Some kind of sincere, scientific, detached introspection is needed. It doesn't do any good to go into our character and try to see something if we're all worked up emotionally. It doesn't do any good. We have to have a detached attitude. We have to use our creative imagination. We have to remember what other people have said about our behavior. We have to follow out our intuition. And of course, in the case of the students of Master DK, they were pretty well told, okay, these are your glamours, and on these you have to work. And I'm sure the day will come for many of us, as Master DK will be one of the externalizing masters from all indications, that we will have the direct word about improving our character into real usefulness. He was pretty funny at one point. He said, I'm trying to find the reference again, where Master DK is describing a disciple coming in his direction and in the direction of the hierarchy, and he's saying, oh, use me, Master, use me. And the Master says, well, what makes you so sure you're useful? Now, boy, that's a cold shower, isn't it? And, before we get overly eager about our value to them, we have a lot to straighten out. So I think what I've done here is I may have, let's see what I've done. I'm afraid I may have.
You inadvertently copied the first two lines of C, causes initiated by the individual.
Thank you, Michael. I'll take care of it later. I won't waste your time. I won't waste your time now. Yep. Okay. I did that, and I just noticed it. Well, it has been a very short night, unfortunately. And you know how it is when you're at the computer and you suddenly, you wake up and your finger has been on a key and you're 150 pages ahead of where you were before. It's been one of those nights. Okay. Now, your thoughts, friends, your questions, and things of that nature. What would you like to discuss? Is there anything that captures your interest? Anything that captures your interest and that you would like to question? Okay. So here is Kim, and she's writing a few things, and Natnia too. Okay, right, but part of that was technical. Okay, so that's been taken care of. Thank you. Now, we have some things from Kim. I recently started watching the very first webinar. Where do we find the handouts mentioned in that webinar? Well, gosh, I'm probably not the person to ask, and I'm just hoping that Joe, BL, or Michael knows something about that. I'll tell you what, maybe, Joe, would you be so kind as to correspond a little bit with Kim? Maybe we can zero in on what those handouts are, and if you don't have them, maybe I have them somewhere, okay? but I've got to know what they are, and I can't do that right now. Well, the third category of glamour, Kim, is exactly the one we're getting into. And the next number of pages are going to be exactly those, where we are the generator of glamour from within our major ray types. So the next several meetings will be about the subject that you are talking about. Now, let's just say, let's see if I can take a look at this here. Yep. Wow. I've repeated some things here, but I'll take care of that. Starting from around page 120, there it is. 120, 121, start with first ray glamours and go all the way through all the different tendencies toward glamour of the different ray types. That's what we're taking up. So there's not too much that I can say about it. We've looked at some of the larger causes of glamour based on the planets, based upon the stage of development of man, based upon deliberate interference, or maybe we'll get into that, of certain intelligent beings that wanted to hold humanity back. And now we're going to get into the kind of glamours that just arise spontaneously from ourselves because they are ray glamours, and we have not yet conquered the tendencies of our rays so we can use them in a really useful manner. That's the problem. So that's coming up. Well, yeah, the soul identifies with Maya. Look, the whole universe is the Maha Maya. It's the great illusion. DK is more technical about it. You know, when we start misinterpreting the universe, he calls it the great illusion, especially when we're dealing with the ancient heresy, there being only one, the ancient heresy of separateness. So that seems to be the problem, and that usually results from wrong identification. But from the utterly philosophical point of view, the whole universe, and I'll get into this in this other group, is really a finite, limited instance of some combination of factors which exist in absolute infinitude. So it's a finitude. The universe is finite. And being finite as it is, it cannot contain reality as reality really is. So the universe itself is the ever-recurrent, cyclic Mahamaya, and why it should exist, well, you know, philosophers forever have been speculating about that one. Yeah, he's going to be talking about the dweller on the threshold. Okay. Right. And this, I think, is Veronique. I can't tell here. It looks like it.
Yes, this last comment is from Veronique, and she writes, "This is really talking about the dweller. He is strong in presence and seems to grow or becomes more and more visible as one advances on the path."
The dweller is a very good thing in a way when it becomes the totally trained and totally subdued, integrated personality. Not when it is the opponent of the soul as a very powerful personality, well-trained, well-skilled, can be the opponent. But when there is a acquiescence of the personality ray to the ray of the soul, then we have the dweller and the angel merging, and then the dweller becomes simply a part of our equipment, and we do enter the portal of initiation, and the personality in a way can pass through that portal, or at least receive through the portal the higher spiritual energy. So actually, Veronique, that's maybe the most difficult aspect of glamour to understand, is the dweller. But increasingly, as we become more skillful, refined, effective in the world, a dweller is built up. Now the question is, will that dweller dwell on the threshold of divinity? Will it dwell on the threshold of initiation? Will it stop the progress of the disciple through the portal? Because really we have three things operating. We have the soul on its own plane. We have the soul in incarnation, which is the soul on its own plane, soul in incarnation, which is the soul as it is the disciple. And then we have the personality, skills, and abilities. And the disciple is somehow standing between the pairs of opposites of the personality configuration and the soul on its own plane. But the disciple is the soul. And as I'm fond of pointing out, everything that we think we are is really the monad, actually, in a particular form. So we'll be studying this question of how to use a powerful, trained personality in a way that is not in opposition to the intention of the soul. In the beginning, there might be quite a battle royal going on between the tendencies of the personality and those of the soul. Matter of fact, if we look at the Black Lodge members or the Lords of Form and all that, they are precisely that. They have developed a tremendously powerful personality with a mind nature that is way, way beyond anything we can imagine for itself, for ourselves. And DK tells us they've developed that concrete mind to a point which is unimaginable to us. So they want to just continue that. They want to continue being the dweller, and they do not want to step through the portal of true, selfless, sacrificial initiation. They may pass through the initiations of the threshold, but they're not going to become a true initiate in the Syrian sacrificial sense. Now, if we start identifying as our dweller, this leads on the left-hand path and eventually to the Black Lodge. But DK said, look, there's so few that finally complete that trip. It shows the extraordinarily effective work of the hierarchy of preventing that kind of identification. So we're going to have a powerful personality. And how do we use it? That's the question. And that'll be another one of those evaluations that we all must pass through. Will we be selfishly effective, or will we be selflessly effective on behalf of the plan? Oh, was that a sneeze, possibly? Okay, something happened there when I said, will we be selflessly effective on behalf of the plan? And then I thought I heard
Michael.
A monumental sneeze. Yes, go ahead, dear. Go.
Muted.
Yeah, Tuija, go ahead. Hello? Well, something just happened to mark the moment. Are you there, Tuija? Okay, I don't know what has happened, but there it is. All right. Let's see. Do we have other?
I am here. I am
okay.
here.
Yes. Now say what you would like to say then. Go ahead. Yes? Okay, maybe I think having a miscommunication here.
Michael, do you hear me?
Only
Oh,
now.
you hear. Okay. This.
Tuija, you've just muted yourself. Yourself muted. And until you unmute yourself, I can't hear anymore. Now you go. Okay, go. Go ahead.
Do you hear me, Michael?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So about the dweller, when we think about, oh my God.
Okay, it's not coming through to you. We're not going to hear you, unfortunately. So it's going to be
unmuted.
Forth, unfortunately.
Vera's hand is raised.
Okay, I'm going to give to you one more chance here.
Oh,
if you
okay,
can...
now it is. Do you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Give it a try.
I'm so sorry. I'm on my mobile. So about the dweller, the whole dilemma of dweller, I was thinking sometimes we are talking in relationship to Saturn.
No, it's not going to work. Not going to work, Tuija. We're going to have to examine.
Do you hear me now?
Yes,
okay,
but it keeps cutting. Okay, we'll have to go on. You're self-muted now. We're going to have to go on to Vera, and we'll come back if we possibly can. Okay, so Vera, there you are. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, we are composition of various rays and experiences and glamours. Would it help as a starting point to look at, say, my birth chart and to look at the position of the moon and Saturn? Perhaps these two can indicate some of the major glamour tendencies. What do you think?
I think the moon is always the prison of the soul, and Saturn will oftentimes show us where we are facing glamour and where we have to do something corrective about it. But I will say this: there's glamours or misuse associated with every kind of energy that comes into our energy system. So we cannot astrologically limit ourselves only to those two. We might start there, as you suggest, but other prominent positions which are unique to your horoscope or anyone else's have to be examined. And let's put it like this: there are 19 factors at first. There are 7 rays, there are 12 signs of the zodiac, and if I want to add 10 more, I will say there are 10 planets. Now, among those would be the sun and the moon positions, so we maybe have to eliminate those. But prominent planets have their glamour-inducing tendencies also. So I would say that it's going to be a complex issue to see where the glamours come from, but the moon, since it is the prison of the soul, since it rules the habit nature, since it rules the past and the unredeemed past, is, I think, as you suggest, a good place to start.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. I mean, it's kind of fun to do that. I've taught classes in which, okay, here's our rays, here's our astrological setup, and then we talk about what glamours and difficulties seem to arise from these combinations, and we discuss them in class, and it gets very interesting. Of course, it's a lengthy process. But none of us is free, even as a third degree initiate, unless we're willing to give up everything and follow the Christ. What did he say? You know, sell all you have. So that's the content of the causal body. Give the money to the poor and follow me. Well, that, you know, unless we can do that, we are subject to a very high glamour, and we've made an incorrect choice. The Christ might have done that, but he didn't. You see, the rich young man was quite happy with the content of his causal body. And he says, I want to use this. I don't want to get rid of it. I want to use this in my method of relating and to people and helping them. And the Christ said, well, no, you have to sacrifice everything that is within your causal body and follow me. Well, here's the Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane. And according to the Tibetan, he had worked out a system of saving humanity. Because after all, he had been the head of the hierarchy for 500 years already before that time. But it wasn't the system, or it wasn't the method that Sanat Kumara had in mind. It was not. So the Christ made his choice right there, and he said in his own way, not my will, but thine be done. And that anchored the first strand of real divine will on the planet at that time. Interesting. Oh. He did not do what the rich young man did at the number 3. He did what it is expected to do at the number 6. He was taking the 6th initiation. Okay. Okay.
And one more question. Are there perhaps recordings of those classes you mentioned that you were discussing with your students, the glamour possibilities?
You see, I'm holding my head. Okay. I have hundreds and hundreds of cassette tapes, maybe even thousands of cassette tapes with all of those things on them. So unless I had, I have the tapes, and of course they're in storage, as so much, my life is all over the place here. So it's in Arizona, and I'm going to have to work out some kind of use for those earlier discussions and encounters. And of course, I think I had some 7th-rate people making the tapes. And if yes, it would be really good if that was the case, because they might have even marked what was on them. So let's see, Vera, maybe, or if not that, then we can discuss it in another way, you know, just going forward with the idea. But the idea is always there's a higher will, and no matter how good your system may be, the higher will sees it from a more completed point of view, and that is one of those sacrificial moments in the life of the incarnated soul to say, not my will, Father, but thine be done. And that goes on and on and on until we reach the top. So we might as well get used to it, and Christ set the great example. The Lord Maitreya set the example, and the rich young man was a lesson that we all have to understand something about. Perfectly natural. He worked hard for all this. He wanted to use it. He was an initiate of the 3rd degree. He had a well-stocked causal body, but there was something more he could do. And that's the interesting thing. DK wrote that those people who are involved in expressing their soul or consumed with expressing their soul cannot be used for the reappearance of the Christ and the externalization of the hierarchy. And that's another example on even a lower turn of the spiral of the rich young man and a higher directive. So I really used to ponder on that, and I suggest that we do that. We ponder, where do we stand? Where do we stand with that? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now let's see. I have some others here. Okay, now let's see. I think I have here Alexandra. Go ahead, Alex.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm formulating.
Whoop. Wait. Something happened. Muted by an organizer. Click to unmute. Okay, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm formulating this question as I speak, and I definitely have a question. So it says in the Gita that. Okay. No, I'll go back. Sorry, to the other page. It says in the treatise on white magic that the necessity for clear thinking and the elimination of idle, destructive, and negative thoughts becomes increasingly apparent as the aspirant progresses on his way. So, and also, sorry, I just lost connection before I got on, so I've just lost my page. But my question really is about this. So those who are aware of the conditions in the world today can easily be affected by the glamours and by reactivity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, no matter how good your meditation is and ability to, work in the realm of the abstract mind with synthesis, the concrete mind is still thought form building and can be in a particular direction depending upon how responsive one is, how one responds to the glamours. So, for example, at the moment, there's, the airwaves are full of outrage. Well, they're always full of outrage, but more so. More so now. More so now. So can you speak about our responsibility in thought building and thought form building in dealing with current glamours and current events? Yeah, our responsibility.
It's a big question, and it takes us back. It takes us back to the Yoga Sutras, doesn't it? And it basically says that when thoughts contrary to yoga arise, let the disciple create thoughts which are contrary to the contrary thoughts. So I find myself, my own method, not so much fighting confrontationally the outrageous things that are happening, but in building certain thoughts from which those outrageous things have been eliminated, and in strengthening those thoughts. And I am in the belief that the thoughts created by myself, and others who are working in this way, will have their own sort of spiritual chemical effect upon the negative, outrageous thoughts that are presently circulating everywhere. So I look at this as a creative act. I say, what is the antidote to this? And then I work, not necessarily with entire success yet, then I work on creating the more ideal condition in my creative imagination, a condition which is contrary to the thoughts that I seek to eliminate. And believe me, with what's going on everywhere, you know, especially in the two second-ray soul countries, or at least the prominent ones, the United States and Great Britain, the United Kingdom, there's plenty of opportunity to do that. So I work most every day in that way, visualizing the conditions which will stand for themselves and which will eliminate the essentially weaker, outrageous positions. And that's, I guess that's what I can say about it. Be creative.
It's maintaining the vision, really. It's maintaining the vision rather than going with reaction. Is that right?
Well, that's right, because people like ourselves, we may have that incipient, like, oh my God, you know, reaction. But the vision, especially if it's based on revelation. See, you know, vision is one step short of revelation, but yes, it's main. And then those particular thoughts that are created in that way will attract others, and the numbers will grow, and they will perhaps, once instructed, they'll know how to do it too. So, and we really do have to look, you know, we have to get people thinking correctly. Yes. And feeling correctly, and giving them the opportunity to understand that it's really useful to do that, and get them going on it. Let them practice, and let them do that every day for a little while to help out with this attack. We're under attack now, you know.
Yes. Yes, I thank you so much. I really felt that this is the thing that really needs to be emphasized now, and especially amongst aspirants and esotericists who have some degree of thought power, to realize the crucial responsibility now of what they're thinking and what their thought forms are building, and you know, and you know, not to feel in any way reduced. You know, we actually have the ability to come together, to formulate these thoughts, to take a stand. But you know, we see so much even in our own community of reactivity, sometimes despair, sometimes despair, sometimes despair, and also the words that we use, the words that we use, the thoughts that we put out. Each one is building something. It's just so important. And and I just wanted to.
It's subtle too. And if we can instruct people in the method, then we're doing something. Now, it does no good for the people in the esoteric community to descend into polarization, which now and then happens. Their political views are actually separating them from doing their esoteric work together, and that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
So you know, it basically means we've fallen down and we're not working from as high a point of tension as we should. So we're going to have plenty of practice, and the canon has a lot of fodder here. So yeah, let's see what we can do. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, now let's see. I think what I did, So Veronique, I talked about that a little bit, about the dweller, and that's going to be the ultimate thing, and especially as we approach the third initiation, the dweller becomes a big deal, and really, as I may have read before, the first real glimpse, just a glimpse of what the dweller is achieved at the third initiation. So up till then, you know, we may be dealing with some negative factors that need elimination from our character, but it's not the whole dweller, you know. And probably, I remember an old Manly Hall book, you know. It's always interesting to see what books you may be reading as you get into this field. And it was, you know, Manly Hall was quite a Masonic participant, and he went back to Egypt, where Masonry was a very big thing in their own way. And he had a picture of this this horrible monster standing before the threshold, and I think the candidate was there with the Ankh in his hand, the symbol of Venus penetrating through the final illusion, as DK sometimes calls it, at least on the microcosmic level. So there's a lot of glamour around the glamour of the dweller. But suffice it to say, know thyself. That's the key. It's so simple, but we have to know what's really going on in our energy system, and where correction is needed, then correct. Now, so many people, they just project out there. It's all happening out there. I'm fine. It's not me. I'm not putting anything on anybody. And it's all their fault, you know. So right away, a new form of introspection of a spiritual kind has to take the place of this outgoing projection where it's always the other guy's fault. All right.
Unmuted.
Kim
So,
has a
Karen,
question about consultation, and then Karen's hand was raised.
Yeah, I'm gonna just I've got Karen going here, so we'll start with that. Thank you, Michael. Go ahead, Karen.
Yes, well, your response to Alexandra really answered kind of what my concern was, but I just wanted to talk about this week. You know, we celebrate here in the U.S. the vision and courage of our leaders as they landed the first humans on the moon. And that event gave us our first glimpse of Earth from space, where we saw for the first time our planet from space, and we saw ourselves as one body. It brought great unity and created a shift in consciousness, which I think we're still experiencing. And at the same time this week, we also have seen leaders who lack courage and vision and take our breath away by their cruel and separative behavior and words and the undermining of democracy. And also this week, I listened to Amy Goodman's Democracy Now!, where she interviewed Noam Chomsky, and he mentioned the doomsday clock, which is set for 2 minutes before midnight. The two major problems that threaten life on Earth are nuclear weapons and global climate change. That he said they're thinking of adding a third, which is the undermining of democracies. And I certainly see that reflected, I mean, obviously nationally, but in my city, and recently with an issue regarding neighborhood associations and the ability of citizens to participate in government. And in my city, Portland, Oregon is pretty nationally recognized for having neighborhood associations that have input into city policy and planning. And I know from experience that it has been extremely effective. Well, there's a big assault on that. And right this today in our city council meeting, there was a meeting about this, and many people gave testimony, written and other, and I don't know what city council has decided. I'm trying to find that out. But anyway, in an attempt, like Alexandra was saying, to not be bewildered, to stay detached, to see the symbolism behind the events, you know, that is the challenge. And I really appreciated what you said about what is the antidote to this, because that's really, I think, is very helpful to me. And thinking, you know, again, it's about what is, you know, like I always say, keep your eye on the prize. What's the real goal here? What do I read? What's my truest intention here? Exactly. So I appreciate that very much. And I feel, you know, I mean, it's so extraordinary this week, just the dichotomy of these events. So I appreciate having a place to talk about it.
That's good. Well said. Well said, Karen. You know, in fascism, there is the will of the one dictator, and it's a stage of personality development, not a high stage particularly. It's the fascist stage, and it has to undergo decentralization. You know, oftentimes the sign Leo is involved with the fascist mentality. It was in the case of Mussolini, with his, I think, Sun in Leo and Scorpio rising. We have it in the modern version in America with the occupant of the White House having the ascendant Leo and Mars rising in Leo. When it came to Hitler, Saturn was in Leo at the top of the chart, and DK said, I have not studied the personal horoscope of Hitler, but I have studied the soul horoscope, and Leo is extremely involved. And then, you know, with Japan at the time, the whole thing about the rising sun was there as well. So, you know, we have to get beyond this sort of adolescent, follow the leader stage, and the will of everybody, even in, it has to be allowed to be expressed. And that is the bringing to earth of the spiritual will and divine will eventually. It may start in a way that said, oh, well, this is unschooled, and I'm hearing a lot of strange noises in the background. What's happening here? Is anybody on who is having...
You're hearing probably background noise from my cat.
Oh, the cat. Oh, okay. My wife is still trying to get on the... Anyway, everybody's will counts. And that's what democracy is all about, and that's the beginning of the will really descending on earth. So anything that takes us back to that more primitive stage of fascism, about which America has been warned by the Tibetan, it's latent fascism, anything of that nature is a retrogression. And we have to get everybody's opinion coming forward in a civil manner. We really have our work cut out for us. Okay, well, thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Michael.
I appreciate your sharing on that. Okay, very good. All right, now it looks like we have Rebecca. You have quite a, oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Mephistopheles, you know, I'm not sure what to do about that, because good old Mephistopheles is in a, oh, I see. You're showing it. You know, I've had my experience with Mephistopheles. I want to tell you about that. I was an opera director, and I directed the opera Faust. And it's a French opera by Gounod, and Mephistopheles is quite the character in this Faustian drama. And he seems to promise that everybody will get their wishes fulfilled, but on a lower level. And they naturally flock to him. And he has one very famous song, Le Veau d'Or, the golden calf is still standing. And it's a fantastic song. And it really shows you what the counterforce is. It's not too far from the fascism which is descending on certain countries at this time. So anyway, now let's see. I think Tuija wants to say something. Kim, I haven't forgotten you. I'm coming down here as I go along, and I think I have. Yeah, thanks, Rebecca, for that. I can't see what it is right now, but you know, at a certain point, we'll look at it. And
it's a long Google link for Manly Hall's image that you were describing, and I cannot copy it from the chat box, and it's too long to go through and figure out how to put it in.
Well, maybe if you will send that. Rebecca, to me, infinitize8@gmail.com, and to Michael Stacy, you can put your email there, Michael, and then she can send it, and we can get it out to people. Okay, now Tuija, now hold on. We're going to give it a try again. Tuija, give it a try. Okay, go ahead. No, I don't hear a thing. And yet you are on. You are on, but I don't hear a thing.
One can send the keyword.
Okay, no. Sorry, I'm looking right at her, and she's got her phone there, and unfortunately there's a big lag time, and it's not working out. No. Better stick to the computer if you can. Okay, now let me go on. It was Kim. I don't know if this is too far off the topic, but it seems to me that the worldwide issue of the institutions wanting to roll out 5G is a major issue, vis-a-vis how it will affect our EM, electromagnetic fields. Yeah, you know, Kim, I got to say I don't know too much about it, but I do know this, that DK told us that it would be very destructive for humanity to be in touch with the Deva kingdom initially, and that a lot of disease and other injury and death would result by premature connection with the Deva kingdom, I suppose the elemental groups, without sufficient knowledge to handle them. So maybe these ideas correspond. We're wading into areas where we don't know the final effects. Now, you know how it is with the cell phones and all that. They've decided, yeah, that's causing a form of cancer in many people, but nobody knew that when it started. And we will see what these variations in the electromagnetic field bring. They won't last forever once the problem is discovered. Okay, so now I'm going to try one more time. Go ahead. No. Yeah. Okay, there's nothing we can do about that. Okay. Okay, friends. So that seems to be it. Before we get into our meditation, and I think that is. Here you go, Rebecca. Here is the direct link to the image on Manly Hall's website, Philosophical Research Society, and there it is, Michael.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, I do, Tuija. Yes. No, you see,
hear me now?
It's such a delay.
It's broken.
No. Okay. We can't figure it out. Hey, Tuija, come in here. You can talk. Yeah. She can talk off of my screen. And then she'll get her word in. But then you have that, Michael. Can you copy that from Rebecca? Do you have it? Or is it possible? Here's Manly Hall's website. Maybe I can just make a big.
I have put it out for everyone.
You did. Okay,
yes.
You're good. Very good. Thank you, Rebecca. Manly Hall has one. And by the way, you know that Francis is undertaking.
You cannot show me.
Not only the secret doctrine. No, I'm not. No. Don't say anything. Just talk here. Here, talk through my machine. So do that. Okay. Now go ahead.
I'm so sorry. This hassle. What I was thinking earlier on already about the what is this noise here?
I can't tell you. Just talk.
So about the Saturn related to this dweller, and it is said that Saturn was the one who was helping us to go through the. I'm sorry.
Not only the secret doctrine.
Close this.
Oh, no, go ahead. Don't say. Now talk in there.
Yeah.
You're close here.
Yeah.
Talk here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Because this. Okay, now. So about Saturn, that Saturn was the one who was helping us to bridge the from earlier system to this present system. And we can think about several points in our chart, how to look or go deeper into the dweller. But somehow we could think about the dweller being the mirror. So the dweller is mirroring for us every single thing that we are on the edge to win or conquer. As the Saturn was making the bridge from the earlier system to the new system, present system, which means about the soul, solar system and soul system. And then when we are on the edge of the dweller, we are on the edge of going beyond from the lunar life to the solar life. And in that sense, it gives us the totally different idea than the Saturn as a devil who is capturing us or who is able to code us, which it does during the many millions of years. But then when the incarnated soul, the consciousness, which is incarnating on the physical plane, can have access to win it. And to that I would like to refer to the labors of Hercules and the Hydra and the 10th head. So we can never get rid of really of that dweller, but it becomes as a greatest tool for the master, because that has been the pattern, the long journey for us actually to come to the point that we can make access to the next level. Does it make any sense?
Yes, it does. And what I want to say is something just came to me. It's a very worthwhile idea to consider Saturn as the friend, okay? Now, there is a specific place in the book, Esoteric Astrology, where he talks about the actual configuration that rules the dweller on the threshold. And that configuration is Saturn in Gemini. Now, I don't know who has that. I know I have it. And for 2.5 years, a lot of people had it. But it's the same in a way as Saturn at the 7th house. You face your dweller. And if you're going to face a dweller and an angel, the transit of Saturn over your 7th house cusp is important. So it's right at that point that so many decisions about whether these two, Saturn and the Sun, whether they come together, soul and personality, or whether they remain separate and antagonists. So look that up, Saturn and Gemini, within the book Esoteric Astrology. Okay, friends, now I think actually we really do have to now have our meditation. And I would like us to meditate upon a certain glamour, and I guess I'm just going to call it the glamour of reactivity. In other words, it's emotional reaction, and it is what makes demagogues who are flourishing in the world. I mean, if you want to look back to historical demagoguery, well, I guess you could go back to Roman times, really. But we have it had it in the French Revolution, and we have it now in the United States, in Brazil. Let's see what happens in the United Kingdom. We have a leader stepping forward and wanting to become a dictator. And we have the acquiescence of many, many people giving in to that kind of approach and mindlessly, enthusiastically, stupidly following the one will instead of bringing through their version of their own will. So this is a very dangerous thing, and it represents a retrogression of the human condition, potentially. And I was very interested in what was said there about the climate, weapons, and the undermining of democracy. And now we have been warned. And we'll see whether there's enough built into humanity, enough maturity to not give in to emotional reactivity, but to actually think. When something is proposed, think it through, rather than react on the glamour of sentiment, which is, I like it, I hate it, And we talked about the glamour of sentiment. Just read the beginning of rule number 11 in the rays and the initiations, and you will see those eliminations that have to be affected, and liking and disliking, being attracted, all enthusiastic, or being repelled. Those things have to go. Okay, so let us then meditate on that. We'll call it the glamour of reactivity, but it's based on being centralized in your personality and choosing to go with whatever makes the personality feel more fulfilled, more comfortable, easier, whatever gives into the lower desire, giving the personality what it wants, okay? That's the basis, rather than pausing, thinking about what was said, thinking it through, and working from the illumined mind. Okay, so that's good, Michael. Yeah, something came in there. Yeah, do follow Philip Lindsay's monthly newsletters, because he's really an expert, and he's one of those people that does a terrific job in applying the current astrological situation to our current political, social, and the general condition of humanity. He does a good job. Okay, here we go. So, a little silence. Now, we're venturing into this maelstrom of stormy energies, so we will use the formula of protection. And you know, it's this, he calls it the cross of divinity, okay? There are different kinds of crosses, but obviously this involves seeing. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. So everyone traces a lighted cross in the way indicated, and the whole group has that too. The cross of divinity, when the word like divinity is used, remember, divinity indicates the first highest planes of the cosmic physical plane, the monadic and the logoic planes. Spirituality, everything below that in the realm of the spiritual triad and so forth, and the higher mind. Now, three lights must come together. We know how to do this, so we'll draw up the light of matter, etheric, physical, onto the mental plane, and blend it with the light of mind. So not only can we think clearly, logically, in a penetrative manner, but we do so with vitality. We are supported by substance, energy of matter. And we reach up also to touch, if we can get the feel of it, the light of the soul. And we bring that light of the soul down onto the usual mental plane, blending the light of matter, the light of mind, and the light of soul, blending the three. The three are as if the one. So get a good, clear image of that, because out of that light on the plane of mind will come the beam of revelation and the beam of dissipation. They are the same beam, but they both reveal and destroy. And we say together then, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. And then we're going to use the formula. Our beam is ready to use. It is imaginative, but it is real as well. We're going to visualize, as we say the formula words, we'll visualize the great searchlight awakening and casting its light out onto the astral plane, which is still an objective sphere. It's not really subjective, it's subtle, but not subjective. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So we're linking two worlds. We're linking the soul realm as illuminated by the intuition, and we're linking this subtle world of desire, of distortion, of glamour. Now we're going to add the spiritual will to strengthen our beam. So there is the group beam. It finds all places where there is emotional reactivity and consequent inability to really understand. Finds those areas. So let us strengthen our beam with power. Upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Okay, so we will detect these areas of reactivity, blinding, the subject for demagogues and those who seek to dictate and usurp the rightful will of the people and of each human being. Centralizing all will within the dictatorial self, we will look at the condition that makes that possible for certain people. So let's think for a moment of what it has meant to the world to have fascist dictators to whom respond the unthinking masses ruled by emotional mass consciousness. We had, well, an age of dictators, and the easily led masses, and in World War II, it almost meant the destruction of humanity, because, you know, Il Duce, it's the leader, Der Führer, it's the leader. The escape from freedom, as the author Erich Fromm, social psychologist, psychoanalyst, as he described it in his very interesting book. We cannot escape from the responsibility of our own will, but that needs, of course, mental focus, and we have to lift the educational level. So let's use this triple word of power to try to help rid ourselves of this abdication from careful thinking and responsibility. People who are simply emotionally focused, they can be led almost anywhere according to the will and the skill of the demagogue. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of, let's call it, blind emotional reactivity. Blind emotional reactivity. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour, blind emotional reactivity, from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of blind emotional reactivity. Now, let us have our time when we penetrate into this glamour, producing its weakening and dissipation. 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose as we see this proceed. Blind emotional reactivity, dissipating this glamour. So it's going to take a while before the Atlantean consciousness, with its blindness and its susceptibility, can be transferred into serene thought. Always something must replace that we're attempting to dissipate, and I often imagine a sun shining upon the astral plane, carrying the contrary quality to the one we are dissipating. Serene, penetrative, illumined thought, replacing blind emotional reactivity, which is such an easy mark for the demagogic dictators. And now we will sound the Om 3 times, imagining that some work has been done to bring more light of clear thought, or at least to prevent emotional reaction from getting in the way of thought. This is the reason why the Ray 2 astral body is so often more conducive to the clarity of thought than is the Ray 6. So we withdraw our beam onto the mental plane, redistribute the lights to their sources, and realize that we have an occult technique which can be very helpful in this powerful internal work. 3 times the Om. Okay, friends, very soon, of course, we'll be working on our own individual glamours as well. It's quite a curriculum and quite a responsible task that we have. So I want to thank you for attending, and this tomorrow morning we'll have the broadcast, and then on Sunday morning we'll have the attracting money for hierarchical purposes broadcast. I may be having to take over some of these programs because Tuija will be out of town, and I'll do my best. It'll be a little simpler and not so polished perhaps, but one of us will be there. So thank you kindly for being with us. Lots of love to all of you. Many blessings to all of you, and the power to carry through your responsibilities. Recognize what they are, and then carry them through. Okay. We'll see you now. Bye-bye.